In 1588, the world watched as the mightiest fleet ever assembled set sail from Spain. The Spanish Armada was more than a collection of ships. It was the embodiment of imperial ambition, religious fervor, and the dream of reshaping Europe's order forever. Across stormy seas and through royal courts, the Armada was seen as an unstoppable force. Its mission, to invade England, crush its Protestant queen, and return the island to Catholic rule. It was a gamble that seemed destined to succeed. For centuries, the story has been told as one of English heroics, nimble ships and daring captains outsmarting a lumbering giant. But the truth is more complex. The Armada's defeat was not simply a matter of courage or luck. How did a fleet backed by the wealth and power of the Spanish Empire, armed with the latest technology and centuries of naval experience, fail so completely? What unseen forces and crucial decisions led to its undoing? In this story, we'll journey from the glittering courts of Spain to the windswept coasts of England, uncovering the ambition, the planning, the battle, and the unexpected forces that shaped one of history's most dramatic turning points. At the close of the 16th century, Spain stood at the height of its power. King Philip II ruled over vast territories, stretching from the Americas to the heart of Europe, his empire fueled by silver and gold from the New World. Spanish armies were feared across the continent, their discipline and firepower unmatched. The Spanish Navy, strengthened by decades of conquest and innovation, patrolled the seas with confidence and pride. Yet beneath this dominance, new threats were emerging. England, under Elizabeth I, was a rising power, restless, energetic, and fiercely Protestant. To Philip, her defiance was both a challenge to his rule and an affront to his faith. The clash between Spain and England was more than a struggle for land or treasure. It was a battle for religious supremacy, fought at a time when faith and politics were inseparable, and every victory or defeat echoed across Christendom. Philip saw himself as the defender of Catholic Europe, determined to silence English pirates, punish heresy, and restore unity to a divided continent. The stakes were nothing less than the soul of Europe itself. The plan for invasion took shape amid mounting tensions. English privateers like Francis Drake had raided Spanish ports and plundered treasure ships. In the Netherlands, Protestant rebels fought against Spanish rule, aided by English support. Philip's answer was bold: assemble a fleet of 130 ships carrying more than 30,000 men to sail from Spain, link up with an army in the Netherlands, and deliver a crushing blow to England's shores. The Armada was a marvel of logistics and ambition. War galleons, supply ships, and heavily armed vessels gathered in Spanish ports, their decks crowded with soldiers and supplies for a campaign that would decide the fate of nations. Spanish leaders believed in their superiority, technologically, numerically, and spiritually. The fleet was blessed by priests, its mission declared holy, and its men convinced they carried the will of God across the water. Meanwhile, England braced for invasion. Though outnumbered, English commanders prepared with determination and ingenuity. Their ships were lighter, faster, and designed for maneuver, not brute force. A network of coastal beacons was built, ready to alert the nation at the first sight of enemy sails. Spies and scouts gathered intelligence, while shipyards worked day and night to prepare for the coming storm. Yet beneath the surface, the Spanish plan was more fragile than it appeared. Coordination between the fleet and the army in Flanders was complex and risky, and the English were determined to exploit every weakness. In May 1588, the Armada finally set sail from Lisbon, its sails billowing with hope and determination. Trumpets sounded, banners flew, and the world's eyes turned to the horizon. But almost immediately, the fleet faced trouble. Fierce Atlantic storms battered the ships, scattering squadrons and forcing many vessels back to port for repairs. Supplies ran low and morale began to waver. The fleet's commander, the experienced Marquis of Santa Cruz, died suddenly. In his place, Philip appointed the Duke of Medina Sidonia, a nobleman with little naval experience, chosen more for loyalty than skill. Under Medina Sidonia, The Armada regrouped and pressed on, but the early delays were costly. Food spoiled, water ran foul, and disease spread among the crowded decks, sapping the strength of the men. As the Armada approached the English Channel, the sense of destiny remained, but the first cracks had appeared. The Spanish plan, so carefully constructed, was already beginning to unravel. On the English side, Lord Howard of Effingham and Sir Francis Drake took command. They understood that direct confrontation would be deadly, so they relied on speed, surprise, and relentless harassment. English ships darted in and out of range, unleashing broadsides, and then retreating before the heavier Spanish guns could respond. Their tactics were designed to disrupt, confuse, and wear down the enemy. Communication was key. Coastal beacons blazed at the first sign of the Armada, sending word across the countryside in minutes. English intelligence, aided by spies and scouts, kept commanders informed of every Spanish move. The first skirmishes erupted in the Channel. The English fleet shadowed the Armada, probing for weaknesses, while Spanish ships struggled to maintain their tight defensive formation. At every turn, the English exploited their home advantage. They knew the tides, the shoals, and the unpredictable winds of the Channel, giving them an edge that no amount of Spanish firepower could erase. The pivotal moment came at Gravelines. As the Armada anchored off the coast, the English launched a daring night attack, sending fireships, vessels set ablaze, drifting into the Spanish lines. Panic spread as Spanish crews cut anchor cables to escape the flames, scattering the fleet and breaking its formation. In the chaos, English ships attacked with renewed ferocity, inflicting heavy damage. Despite their losses, the Spanish still hoped to regroup and link with the Duke of Parma's army in Flanders. But the rendezvous never happened. Communication broke down, and English blockades kept Parma's troops bottled up. With no army to escort and English ships pressing relentlessly, the Armada had no choice but to flee north, seeking a way home by sailing around Scotland and Ireland, a route fraught with peril. It was here that the greatest enemy revealed itself, the weather. Fierce storms, later called the Protestant wind, battered the Spanish ships, driving them onto treacherous coasts and scattering survivors across the sea. Supplies ran out, hunger and thirst took hold, and disease spread unchecked. Many ships were wrecked on the rocky shores of Ireland and Scotland, their crews perishing in the cold Atlantic waters. The Armada's retreat became a nightmare. Of the original 130 ships, more than half were lost. Thousands of men died, not in battle, but to the relentless forces of nature and exhaustion. Spanish commanders had relied on careful coordination and overwhelming strength. But their plan unraveled under the weight of logistical errors, miscommunication, and the unpredictable fury of the sea. The defeat was not just a matter of English valor or Spanish weakness. It was the result of countless factors: human error, flawed strategy, and the uncontrollable power of nature, all colliding at a moment of history. For Spain, the loss was devastating. The aura of invincibility that had surrounded Philip's empire was shattered. The myth of Spanish supremacy, carefully cultivated for decades, was undone in a matter of weeks. England, by contrast, was transformed. The victory became a source of national pride, celebrated as proof of divine favor and the strength of the English spirit. Elizabeth's rule was secured, and her legend grew. The consequences rippled across Europe. Other nations, once cowed by Spanish power, saw that even the mightiest empire could be humbled. The balance of power began to shift, opening new opportunities for rivals and rebels alike. While Spain remained a formidable force, the Armada's failure marked the beginning of its gradual decline. English seafarers grew bolder, venturing farther afield, and the age of British naval supremacy was born. The defeat also changed the nature of warfare at sea. The importance of maneuver, intelligence, and adaptability became clear, shaping the strategies of navies for generations to come. But the story of the Armada is not simply one of military triumph or disaster. It is a lesson in the limits of power, the dangers of overconfidence, and the unpredictable role of chance in shaping history. The Spanish believed that numbers, faith, and planning would guarantee victory. But the sea, the wind, and the ingenuity of their enemies proved stronger than any calculation or conviction. For all their preparation, neither side could control the forces that ultimately decided the outcome. The Armada's fate was sealed by a combination of human ambition and the uncontrollable chaos of nature. In the aftermath, Europe would never be the same. The defeat of the Armada signaled the end of one era and the dawn of another, a world where no empire, however mighty, could claim absolute dominance. The battered survivors who limped home to Spain carried more than tales of hardship. They brought back a warning that even the grandest plans, backed by the greatest resources, are never immune to failure. The legend of the Armada endures, not because it conquered, but because it failed so spectacularly. Its story is a reminder that history's turning points are shaped as much by the unexpected as by the planned. The world's greatest fleet set out to conquer, but returned in defeat. Its legacy is not one of glory, but of humility, a testament to the limits of human power in the face of nature and fate. As we look back, the fall of the Armada invites us to question simple explanations. It was not just English heroism or Spanish miscalculation, but a web of decisions, errors, and uncontrollable forces. To understand why the Armada failed is to see that history's outcomes are rarely inevitable. Even the most powerful empires can be brought low by a single storm, a single mistake, or a single missed opportunity. The defeat of the Spanish Armada changed the course of history, not through a single battle, but through the collision of ambition, strategy, and the unpredictable power of the world itself. In the end, the story of the Armada is a story of limits, of how even the greatest plans can be undone by events no one can predict or control. The battered ships that returned to Spain were more than relics. They were symbols of an empire forced to confront its own vulnerability and a world forever changed by the winds of fate. History remembers the Armada not for the empire it built, but for the lesson it left behind, that the tides of power are always shifting and that no force, however mighty, is truly invincible.